Elder Vikos moved through the great hall of the conclave, their long fingers brushing against the ancient stone walls. Soft light pulsed from their skin in slow, calm waves. That was how the Illyri showed peace. Vikos felt peaceful now. The hall was quiet. The air smelled of old paper and time. For 10,000 cycles, the conclave had ruled the galaxy. They were old. They were wise. They had found peace long ago and made sure every new species that rose among the stars learned to value that peace above all else. It was a good system. It had worked for longer than most species had existed. But like all old systems, it rested on a foundation of old fears. Vikos stopped before the great archive door. The symbols carved into it told the oldest story the Illyri knew. It was the story of the Great Silence. Long ago, before the conclave, the galaxy had been different. Chaotic. Dangerous. There had been predators everywhere, feeding on the weak. But the first ascended species had risen up. They had used their minds, their unity, their psychic strength, and they had pushed the darkness back. They had silenced the chaos. And at the heart of that old story, there was a name whispered only to younglings, Terran. The Terrans were the ultimate predator, the myth said. A species that had not learned peace. A species that could not be touched by psychic harmony. They were beasts wearing the skin of thinkers. They solved problems with violence. They grew stronger through conflict. They were a biological impossibility, a nightmare that the first ascended species had destroyed so completely that no proof of them remained. Vikos had always found the story comforting. It showed how strong the conclave was. They had defeated the unbeatable. Nothing could threaten them now. The door to the archive opened with a soft hum. Inside, Vikos worked in silence, organizing records from young species seeking to join the conclave. Most were boring. Reports on planetary conditions. Lists of resources. Formal requests written in clumsy language. Then they found the probe report. It came from a species called the Kith. They were new. Eager. They had sent a deep space probe beyond the galactic rim, hoping to impress the conclave with their ambition. The probe had found something. An object. Old. Artificial. When the probe got close, the object woke up. Vikos read the words slowly. The object was now sending out a signal. A single pulse. Repeating. The Kith did not know what it meant, so they had sent the data to the conclave for analysis. Vikos felt a cold knot form in their chest. Their skin light dimmed. They did not know why. They carried the data to the High Circle without waiting for permission. The High Circle was the heart of the conclave. 7 elders, each from a different founding species, sat in a circle of floating stones. Their psychic presence filled the room like heat from a fire. Vikos gave them the data and waited. The elders closed their eyes. They reached out with their minds to touch the signal. One of them gasped. Another made a sound Vikos had never heard from an elder before. It was fear. The lead elder, a tall being named Xylos, opened their eyes. For the first time in Vikos' memory, Xylos looked old. Truly old. Tired. What is it? Vikos asked. Xylos did not answer immediately. They waved a hand, and the signal filled the room. It was not music. It was not language. It was rhythm. Deep. Steady. Insistent. Drums. War drums. This signal, Xylos said slowly, is older than the conclave. Older than any of us. It is a beacon left behind by the first ascended species. It was meant to wake up only if. Xylos stopped. If what? Vikos asked. At that moment, a glow filled the room. Vikos turned. The oldest texts in the archive, the ones kept behind sealed walls, were beginning to shine. They had not glowed in 10,000 cycles. Vikos had never seen them glow. No living being had. The words appeared in the ancient tongue, but Vikos could read them. Every archivist could. The words burned themselves into Vikos' mind. Asterisk the predator stares. Asterisk. Silence filled the high circle. The kind of silence that comes before something terrible. Xylos looked at Vikos with eyes that held no peace. You are an archivist. You know the old routes. The old places. You will take a small ship to the rim. You will find out what woke the beacon. And if it is not a natural anomaly. Vikos asked. Xylos did not answer. They did not need to. The look on their face said everything. Vikos left the chamber with heavy steps. Behind them, the ancient words still glowed against the dark stone. The predator stares. For the first time in their long life, Vikos began to pray. They prayed that the signal was nothing. They prayed that the old stories were just stories. But deep in their heart, where the psychic light of their people burned the brightest, they felt something they had never felt before. The cold shadow of a fee older than memory. The asterisk song of serenity asterisk dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the rim sector. Vikos stood at the observation window, their soft light glowing pale blue with anticipation. Behind them, the small crew worked in silence, their movements calm and practiced. The ship was unarmed. It had never needed weapons. The conclave did not believe in them. The sensors came online slowly, stretching out into the darkness. Vikos expected to find empty space. Maybe some old rocks. Maybe nothing at all. What the sensors found instead made no sense. Vikos stepped closer to the display. The readings were wrong. Chaotic. The sensors were designed to detect psychic energy, the gentle glow of sentient minds, the smooth patterns of refined minerals. But this sector screamed with something else. Violent bursts of electromagnetic radiation pulsed from everywhere. Structured noise, thousands of separate signals layered on top of each other, filled the space like a storm. "What is that sound?" Vikos asked. The sensor operator shook their head. "It is not sound. It is communication. But it is not psychic. It is mechanical. Artificial. I cannot decode it." Vikos looked at the main display. Thousands of objects moved through the sector. Small ones. Large ones. All of them fast. Faster than anything the conclave built. They were made of crude alloys, heavy metals, materials that screamed of mining and industry, not artistry and harmony. "Where are they going?" Vikos whispered. The answer came when the display showed the source. A fleet. It was massive. Ships of every size filled the darkness like a metal city. But they were not beautiful. Conclave ships were smooth and graceful, built to flow through space like living things. These ships were hard, angled, armored. Scars covered their hulls, marks of battles fought and survived. And everywhere, on every ship, there were projections. Long tubes, circular housings, angular boxes. Vikos had studied old texts. They knew what those projections were. Weapons. The legends, Vikos said quietly. They are real. The crew began to panic. Vikos felt it in the psychic field, sharp spikes of fear breaking the calm. They forced their own light to stay steady. "We must make contact," Vikos said. "We will show them we mean no harm. It is the only way." The crew looked at Vikos with wide eyes, but they obeyed. They prepared the psychic broadcaster. It was the most powerful tool on the ship, capable of sending a wave of pure harmony across vast distances. It had never failed. No mind could resist its call for peace. "Send it," Vikos said. The wave went out. Soft. Warm. A greeting that carried no threat, only the promise of peace. Vikos closed their eyes, imagining the wave touching the minds of the beings on those hard, scarred ships. They would feel calm. They would feel safe. They would understand. It did not work. On board the human flagship Indomitable Admiral Elias Thorne was drinking cold coffee when his head exploded with pain. He dropped the cup. His hands went to his temples. Around him, the bridge crew was doing the same. Some cried out. Some fell to their knees. Then came the dizziness. A warm, wrong feeling that made his stomach turn. His mind felt slow, foggy, like someone was trying to push something into it. Thorne had fought in 3 interstellar wars. He had seen aliens do strange things. But this was an attack. He knew it in his bones. "Red alert," he shouted, forcing the words through the pain. "All hands to battle stations. I want a location on that signal now." The crew moved through the pain. They were trained for this. Within seconds, the sensors found the source. A single small ship, unlike anything in the database, drifting at the edge of the fleet's formation. "They are emitting some kind of directed energy field," the tactical officer reported. "It is affecting the crew. Physical symptoms only. No hull damage." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "They are trying to get inside our heads. Fire a warning shot across their bow. Make sure they understand." The railgun fired. On the song of serenity Vikos felt it before they saw it. A wall of psychic force slammed into the ship. It was not harmony. It was not peace. It was aggression, raw and hot. Defiance. Fury. And beneath it all, something even more terrifying, the unbreakable will to protect. The ship shook. An alarm blared. Outside the window, a massive projectile tore through the space directly in front of them, close enough to leave a burning trail across Vikos's vision. "They fired at us," someone screamed. Vikos could not move. Their mind was still reeling from what they had felt. That psychic blast was not from a machine. It was from the beings themselves. Every human on that fleet, every single one, had sent out their own wave of aggression. Their collective will had physical force. The legends said the Terrans could not be touched by psychic power. They were wrong. The Terrans had their own psychic presence. But it was not harmony. It was a storm. A weapon. "Get us out," Vikos said, their voice barely a whisper. "Now." The asterisk song of Serenity asterisk fled. Behind them, Admiral Thorne watched the unknown vessel disappear into faster than light. He rubbed his temples, where the headache was already fading. "Mark that sector," he said to his crew. "We are going to find out what that was. And we are going to find out why they tried to attack us." He looked at the fading trail of the alien ship and felt something old stir in his chest. Something his ancestors had carried across the stars. Caution. And a readiness for war. The asterisk song of Serenity asterisk returned to the conclave faster than it had ever traveled. Vikos did not speak during the journey. They sat in the observation room, their light dim and flickering, seeing nothing but the image of that projectile burning across their vision. When they arrived, the conclave was waiting. The elders had felt the fear coming from the crew before the ship even docked. Vikos stood before the high circle and told them everything. The chaotic signals, the scarred fleet, the weapons, the warning shot, and the psychic blast, the wave of raw human fury that had physically pushed their ship back. When Vikos finished, silence filled the chamber. Then came the panic. Elders spoke over each other. Some demanded the conclave mobilize every ship. Others wanted to hide, to erase all signs of their existence. A few simply sat in shock, their lights dark, their minds retreating into themselves. Vikos watched them and felt something strange. Not fear. Not anymore. Something colder. Clearer. While the elders argued, Vikos left the chamber. They walked through the empty halls of the archive, past shelves that had not been touched in centuries, to a door they had only seen once. It was the door to the sealed section. The forbidden texts. The old myths. The door opened for Vikos because of their rank. No one had asked to enter it in over 3,000 cycles. Inside, the air was dry and still. Shelves stretched into darkness, covered in dust. Vikos walked to the oldest section, the one marked with symbols so ancient that most archivists could no longer read them. But Vikos could. The symbols said, *the Terran War. *. They pulled the first text from the shelf. It was not a book. It was a memory crystal, a thing of pure psychic energy, preserved for millennia. Vikos touched it and the memories poured in. What they saw shattered everything they believed. The first ascended species, the ones the conclave called the progenitors, were not peaceful. They were conquerors. They had ruled the galaxy through fear and psychic enslavement. They found young species and bent their minds to the progenitor's will. Whole civilizations became slaves without ever holding a weapon. Then the progenitors found a small world in a harsh system. High gravity. Thin atmosphere. A world that should not have been able to support intelligent life. But it did. The beings there called themselves humans. The progenitors reached out with their minds to enslave them, as they had done to so many others. And they failed. The human mind was wrong. It was loud. Chaotic. Full of noise that the progenitors could not penetrate. Every human brain was different, separate, stubborn. They could not be bent. They could not be controlled. The progenitors were afraid. For the first time, they had found something they could not dominate. So they did what conquerors do. They tried to destroy it. The memory crystal showed Vikos the war. It was not a war like anything the conclave knew. It was not a conflict of psychic waves and harmony. It was fire, blood, steel. The humans were primitive, but they were clever. They learned from every defeat. They took progenitor technology and made it better. They took progenitor weapons and turned them around. And they hunted. The progenitors had never been hunted before. They did not know what it was to be prey. They learned quickly. The humans did not fight for glory or conquest. They fought for survival. And they were very, very good at it. The war lasted 1,000 years. In the end, the progenitors broke. They did not defeat humanity. They could not. So they ran. They gathered what was left of their empire and fled to the galactic core. They built the conclave. They rewrote their history. They told the younger species that they had always been peaceful shepherds. They told them about the Terrans, the apex predator, the monster that the first ascended species had defeated through unity and psychic will. They turned humanity into a myth. A boogeyman to keep the younger species afraid and obedient. But the truth was the opposite. Humanity was not the predator. The progenitors were. Humanity was the victim who had refused to die. Vikos pulled their hand away from the memory crystal. Their whole body was shaking. Their light flickered wildly, unable to hold a steady color. They sat in the darkness of the sealed archive for a long time, thinking. The conclave was built on a lie. Every law, every teaching, every tradition came from that lie. The peace they worshipped was not peace. It was fear wearing a mask. The unity they celebrated was not unity. It was control. And now humanity had found them. Not as monsters. Not as predators. But as survivors. As the ones who had been wronged. Vikos stood up slowly. Their legs felt weak. But their mind was clear. Clearer than it had ever been. They had to tell the truth. The elders would try to stop them. The conclave would call them a heretic. But it did not matter. The truth was the truth. The people had to know that their peaceful society was born from slavery. They had to know that the Terran myth was a lie. They had to know that the beings in those scarred ships were not coming to destroy them. They were coming to finish a war that should have ended 10,000 years ago. And this time, there was nowhere left to run. Vikos walked into the high circle with the memory crystal in their hands. Their light burned bright and steady. They did not hide their purpose. The elders turned to look, and for a moment, the room was silent. I have found the truth, Vikos said, holding the crystal up. The Terrans are not the predators. We are. The progenitors were slavers. They tried to destroy humanity, and humanity fought back. The conclave was built on lies. For a moment, no one moved. Then High Arbiter Xylos rose from their seat. Their presence filled the room like a weight pressing down on every mind. You have been touched by the enemy, Xylos said, their voice calm and cold. You have brought their madness back with you. I have brought proof, Vikos said. Let the conclave see the memories. Let them judge for themselves. Xylos's eyes narrowed. They raised a hand, and Vikos felt the psychic pressure grow stronger. The memory crystal flew from their grasp and shattered against the far wall. There is no proof, Xylos said. There is only the enemy's influence. You are no longer an archivist. You are a heretic. Guards, take them away. Vikos tried to speak, but the words would not come. The psychic pressure was too strong. Hands grabbed them. The last thing they saw before the doors closed was Xylos turning to the other elders, their face calm and commanding. The Predator has sent its servant to weaken us, Xylos announced. But we will not fall. We will not break. We will show them the power of unity. I declare a crusade of silence. Every mind in the conclave will join together. We will build a barrier that no darkness can cross. We will push the Predator back into the void where it belongs. The elders cheered. Vikos heard it through the closing doors. The sound of a lie becoming law. The crusade began immediately. Every world, every ship, every living being in the conclave was called to join their minds. It was the greatest psychic working in 10,000 years. A barrier of pure will formed at the edge of conclave space, a wall of harmony that nothing could pass. Or so they thought. The human fleet arrived 3 cycles later. Admiral Thorne stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at the sensor readings. A strange energy field stretched across the sector. It was unlike anything he had seen before. Soft. Warm. Almost alive. It is some kind of barrier, the science officer said. It does not match any known technology. Thorne studied the readings. He did not understand the field. But he understood what it was trying to do. They are trying to keep us out, he said. That means they have something to hide. He looked at his tactical display. The human fleet was built for one purpose. War. They did not have psychic powers. They did not have harmony. They had steel. Fire. Speed. Clear path, Thorne said. The human ships opened fire. Kinetic projectiles moved at speeds that made space itself bend around them. They hit the psychic barrier not with harmony, but with force. The barrier held for a moment. Then it cracked. On the conclave side, the effect was immediate. Every mind connected to the barrier screamed. Millions of beings fell to the ground, clutching their heads. The beautiful harmony became chaos. Pain. Fear. Then came the electronic warfare. The humans sent out waves of static, noise, scrambled signals that tore through the conclave's delicate senses like fire through dry grass. The Illyri, who had never known anything but clear psychic sight, went blind. Their ships drifted, helpless. The human fleet moved through the broken barrier like a knife through silk. The conclave sent their ships to fight. They were beautiful vessels, built for ceremony and peacekeeping. They had never fought a real war. The human ships were ugly. Scarred. built by a species that had been fighting since before it learned to walk. The conclave tried their greatest weapon. They reached out with their minds to fill the humans with fear. It was a power that had never failed. No mind could resist it, but the human minds did not break. The fear came, and the humans did something the conclave did not expect. They got angry. Fear became aggression. Aggression became fury. The human crews fought harder, faster. They pushed through the conclave fleet like it was not there. Vikos watched from the observation deck of the conclave capital. They had been released when the attack began. No one cared about heretics anymore. They watched as human soldiers in powered armor boarded conclave ships. To Vikos's psychic senses, each human was a storm. A hurricane of will that their abilities could not touch. The soldiers moved through the beautiful conclave ships, and the defenders simply could not stop them. High Arbiter Xylos stood in the center of the high circle, alone now. The other elders had fled. Xylos watched the human flagship approach and made a decision. They reached out with all their power, all their centuries of psychic strength, and found the mind of the human admiral. For a moment, Xylos was inside Admiral Thorn's head. They expected chaos, violence, a brute's mind. What they found was a fortress. Walls built from 1,000 choices, 1,000,000 sacrifices, generations of survival. Xylos pushed against those walls, and the walls pushed back. They felt the weight of a species that had never stopped fighting, that had crawled out of caves and crossed oceans and left their world and crossed the stars. A species that had been hunted and had refused to die. The weight was too much. Xylos screamed. Their mind, so old, so powerful, shattered against the walls of a single human soul. The psychic feedback tore through them. They fell to the floor of the high circle and did not move again. Vikos watched the human flagship dock with the conclave capital. They felt the human soldiers coming. Their footsteps were heavy on the ancient stone. The war was over. The truth was coming. And Vikos, for the first time in their life, did not know what would happen next. The fighting stopped as quickly as it had started. When the human soldiers entered the conclave capital, they did not come with weapons raised. They came with order, discipline. They secured the halls and stood guard at the doors, but they did not harm anyone who did not fight. Vikos found themselves standing in the high circle, alone among the bodies of fallen elders. Their light flickered with exhaustion and fear, but something else too. Hope, perhaps. Or the ghost of it. Admiral Thorn arrived an hour later. He walked through the ancient halls with heavy boots, his armored form casting long shadows against the glowing walls. When he reached Vikos, he stopped. His face was hard, marked by years of war, but his eyes were calm. "You are the one who came to the rim," he said. It was not a question. "I am," Vikos said. "My name is Vikos. I was an archivist." "Was?" "The High Arbiter called me a heretic, before they tried to destroy your fleet." Thorn's expression did not change. "And now?" Vikos looked around at the broken chamber. The bodies. The silence where once there had been power. "Now I am the only one left who knows the truth." They moved to the main broadcast chamber. It was a place the conclave had used for millennia to send messages of unity and peace to all its worlds. Vikos stood before the broadcaster and held up the fragments of the memory crystals they had managed to save. Their hands were shaking, but their voice was steady. "People of the conclave," they said, "the elders are gone. The High Arbiter is dead. What I am about to show you is the truth. The real history that was kept from you for 10,000 cycles. The memories flowed out across every world. The progenitors as conquerors. The psychic enslavement of countless species. The discovery of humanity. The war. The flight. The lies." Vikos showed it all. When the broadcast ended, silence fell across the conclave. Then came the voices. Millions of them. Confused. Angry. Afraid. The younger species, the ones the progenitors had claimed to protect, learned for the first time that they had been kept in chains of the mind. They learned that their peace was not peace. It was control. On 100 worlds, the old order crumbled. Vikos found Admiral Thorn standing on the bridge of the Song of Serenity. The small ship had been damaged in the fighting, but it still held. Human marines stood guard at the door, but inside, the soft lights of the Illyri still glowed on the walls. "Why did you come?" Vikos asked. "After everything the progenitors did to your species, why did you not destroy us?" Thorn stood at the observation window, looking out at the conclave capital. His reflection in the glass was tired. "The beacon you found," he said. "It was not a warning. It was a signal we had been waiting for. A failsafe left behind by the progenitors when they fled. They thought we would come to finish them, to take revenge. And did you? Thorn turned. His face was hard to read, but his voice was soft. We came because the progenitors ran. They left behind the species they had enslaved, the ones they said they were protecting. We could not let them rebuild, could not let them do to others what they tried to do to us. He looked at Vikos. We did not come to destroy. We came to make sure the chains never go back on. Vikos felt something shift inside them, a weight they had carried since the rim. It lifted, just a little. The conclave taught us to pray you were not real, they said. They said you were monsters in the dark. Thorn almost smiled. We tell our children stories too. About things that hunt in the darkness. Things that want to hurt us. We spent a long time looking at the dark and wondering what was looking back. He met Vikos's eyes. We both got it wrong. Weeks passed. The conclave broke apart, but something new rose in its place. Vikos worked with the younger species, the ones who had been kept in ignorance for so long. They built a new council, not of elders who ruled from above, but of representatives who spoke for their people. Humanity joined them, not as conquerors, not as protectors, as equals. The day the new council met for the first time, Vikos stood beside Admiral Thorn at the center of the chamber. It was not a hall of ancient stone. It was a new place, built by many hands, with light from 100 worlds. They taught us to fear you, Vikos said, looking out at the gathered representatives. They said you were the apex predator, the monster that would destroy us all. Thorn stood with his hands behind his back. He wore no armor now, just the simple uniform of a human officer. We had our own stories, he said, about monsters in the dark, things that wanted to take what we had, hurt the ones we loved. He looked at Vikos, and this time he did smile. A small thing, worn around the edges. Turns out the dark was not so empty after all. The council chamber fell quiet. Vikos looked at the beings gathered there, Illyrian kith and a dozen others, and humans, the species that had been a myth, a legend, a nightmare. They were real. They were here, and they were not monsters. The old legend said humanity was the apex predator, but that was a lie told by slavers to hide their shame. The truth was different. The truth was that humanity had been hunted, forgotten, left to die in the dark. And instead of dying, they had grown. They had crossed the void. They had followed a signal across millennia not for revenge, but to make sure no one else was ever chained. The new legend would not speak of predators. It would speak of guardians, relentless, unbreakable, the ones who came when the signal went out. The galaxy now knew humanity was real. And for the first time, the beings who had once prayed in fear of them learned to pray with them. Not for protection, not for salvation, but together, facing the dark, knowing they were not alone.